by 9:30 that night, I allowed the bill to go to final passage, but they didn't have a quorum. They couldn't pass the bill. So that's an example of what can be done behind the scenes. And, you know, what did I pay for that? Well, political capital, probably, a lot of hours that were there, and ticked off a bunch of people that needed to be treated that way, because they're subverting America.
Yes.
So,
that's a warrior spirit. You know, that's a warrior spirit. Last question.
Expression.
Absolutely.
Right?
I thought what we talked about today in the parking lot was very interesting about these competing philosophies with regard to the education of our children, the dependency, the people who would want to instill a sense of dependency on our young people and all that. And I very thought it was very, very good the way you articulated that. Could you share just a little bit of that?
I don't know if I can do it again, but I can try.
You know what? You remember what
Oh, yeah,
I'm
I sure
talking
do.
about?
I remember.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe I started a little bit different place in our conversation. And maybe a lot of you will know who Marilyn Musgrave is. She's a former member of Congress from Colorado. And she's the one that introduced the marriage amendment when we were elected as freshmen in 2002. She took a terrible beating from the gay community. They dumped millions of dollars against her and eroded her credibility so badly that they finally beat her a couple of years ago. But she was one of those people that I really connected with her from a faith perspective. And one day we were walking across over to the Capitol, and I was trying to devise an argument to use on the left to get them over on my side, and trying to use that rational thought basis that I talked about. And so she's listening to me, and I'm trying this and trying that, and finally she said, "Steve, you don't understand, do you?" Well, no, if I did, I would convince them. She says, "But what you don't understand is that you believe that you're a created being, that you're created in God's image, and that you have life after death and eternal salvation. You're trying to use that rational basis to talk to people that don't believe like you do." Now, think about that difference in the foundation of a philosophy. If you try to use your belief system to rationalize with people that have a completely different belief system, that doesn't mean everybody on that side's atheist, but there's a foundation that's that way. Now, you put that piece down, and then put the piece down that has to do with this core of Western civilization, Christian civilization, as Winston Churchill described it. We are Christian civilization, and the line of demarcation comes down to a lot of these things that I've talked about faith and freedom. But the competing forces in the world, as I mentioned, the forces that held together the Soviet Union, the forces that came out of Karl Marx, that built and put together communist China. You look at the world and the world map, and you can draw a line geographically on the map that'll tell you where's freedom and where's Western civilization. We're the readout of Western civilization on this side of the line, and it's Christian civilization. And you can count some of the countries in the world as our allies in that. They aren't as strong as we are. Australia would be among them, Canada would be another, Great Britain would be another. They watched that erode as they've accepted this promise of safety and dependency in exchange for their liberty and their freedom. And these forces have warred on this planet maybe longer than I realize, but I would take it back to define a moment in time that would be Otto von Bismarck's rule in Germany in the late 1800s, when he, I would call this cynically, established socialized medicine as a means to establish a dependency among the voters in Germany so that they would vote him into power and return him back to power. Now, I remember reading that in the history books years ago, and it was as if he were a wise politician. And but creating a dependency class so that you have a political support expands your power base. That was Bismarck's strategy then, more than 100 years ago, and it's the strategy of Obama today. And it's the strategy of the left. So when you look at the programs that have come forward, and I'm not completely opposed to all of these, but Medicaid, Medicare, all of the welfare programs, we have 72 different welfare programs. You mean you can't track them all? There are so many. They are the siren call of those of us who, we don't want to take the criticism, we don't want to take the controversy, I mean, say that as Republicans, so too often we decide, we're going to go with S-chip, we'll let that happen, and even though Nancy Pelosi wanted it at 300% of poverty, it ends up being in the law, or at 400% of poverty, was the original bill that passed out of the House. We ended up at 300% of poverty. Well, then people on my side think, well, that was some kind of a victory because we diminished the reach of dependency. But it's just an incremental ratchet. And, you know, people will say the pendulum swings both ways, but it ratchets itself to the left each stroke. And so we have the establishment of the dependency class in America that mirrors a lot of what Bismarck's class was. Oh, by the way, and we didn't have this conversation, but an interesting piece of this is, remember Obama went over to speak in Germany as a candidate, not as a president, and he wanted to speak at the Brandenburg Gate so he could stand there in Reagan shoes, I suppose, but when they wouldn't let him speak at the Brandenburg Gate, so he stood with the backdrop. In that image was Otto von Bismarck's Victory Monument in Berlin. Eerie. I mean, it's eerie when you think about the symbolism that they contrive for that. So I see this, the cultural war, the civilizational war, as the clash of two philosophies. One philosophy is a philosophy of expanding and creating more and more dependency so that you can get the proletariats to vote you back in office because it expands the political power base of the people on the left. The other are those that tie together with the Adam Smith philosophy, the Christian philosophy, free enterprise side of this, the independence that has brought about this American spirit. And we're warring back and forth, and the reasons that we've lost so much ground in the last generation, there are many of them, but it's because we've lost our institutions, we've lost the foundation of our education, we haven't done a good enough job of raising our children and letting them understand these timeless values that we have. And I don't think I hit it as good as we had in our conversation, Brian, but I'd ask you to fill in those blanks that I might have left.
No, I think that's good because what we're trying to do as an organization is to reach out to all young people and build character. But there's people that are fighting against what we're trying to do, and when we're trying to build the kind of independence, patriotism, character, respect, responsibility, and free enterprise, work ethic, and all that. And then what you said in the parking lot today was that there's somebody who really wants to create a sense of dependency on part of our young people, and so that was something that I thought the way you explained that today to me was very enlightening.
The Obamacare is a calculated and cynical and a willful effort to create and expand the dependency class in America for the purposes of empowering people on the left side of the aisle. And
minorities.
So is card check.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah, exactly. And
So,
I like that young man who was the black fellow who spoke tonight.
Me too.
I thought he was terrific.
In fact, I'm going to make sure I have his contact information because
Yeah, I have it if you need it.
and I asked Phil too, so I'm sure that. But I think there's a lot of places where he should be speaking and carrying that message.
Yes.
I'm inspired by him.
Yeah.
I stuck around to hear that message. I talked to him down in the crowd. And
Yeah.
I'm inspired by everything that happened here in Orlando.
We're inspired. We're inspired by you.
That's why you never hear the Pelosi, Grayson, Obama, they never give any historical examples of success of anything they propose to do. There are none. You never hear it from them. And, listen, if you guys want to stay around, stay around. I do want to talk to Congressman King for a few minutes, and he's been a real long day. I don't want to get him home at 1 or 2 in the morning. If you want to say bye real quickly to him, that's great, but I do want to have a chance to speak to him. But one that you need to is, how many times politicians, we're just so familiar with, if you can't give them money or this or that, they're looking for something. For him to spend all this time teaching us and educating us and inspiring us, that's so refreshing. But there are some good men and women up there in Congress like that.
And there's going to be more.
We appreciate it.
Not elected.